Let's review Pesachim Daf Mem Tes. The first Mishnah discusses the halachas of when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. And the Mishnah brings a machlokes if the Zman Bir Chametz B'Sreifa is on Erev Shabbos and you just put away enough Chametz to use for Shabbos, or do we say that Bir Chametz could be with any method and therefore the Zman Bir Chametz will be on Erev Pesach, which is on Shabbos. The next Mishnah discusses someone who was headed to do a mitzvah, like to be makriv his korban Pesach, to mal his child, or to go to his Sudas Eresin, and he remembered that he had chametz left at home that he didn't destroy. So the Mishnah tells us if you have enough time to get back, destroy the chametz and still do the mitzvah, that's what you should do. But if not, just make bittul. However, if you were headed to an urgent situation, to save another yid from an emergency, then you shouldn't even consider going back home, just be mevatel the chametz and do the mitzvah that you need to do. The Mishnah also discusses if you are going to do an Erev Tchumen. And there the Mishnah says you should for sure abandon the Erev Tchumen and you should go back home and be mevar the chametz. Then the Mishnah discusses kochim that you've removed from Yerushalayim, kochim that are not allowed to be removed from Yerushalayim, and you remove them from Yerushalayim, so meat from a korban, and you remembered when you were out of Yerushalayim that you took it out. So the question is do you have to go back into the Beis HaMikdash to burn it, or can you burn it where you are? The Mishnah tells us it depends on how far you are. If you're from Tzoifim, which means any place where you can see the Beis HaMikdash from, if you're within sight of the Beis HaMikdash, you're close enough that will make you go back. But if you're further, you can just burn it where you are. Now, how much chametz and how much meat of kochim are we talking about that you have to go back for? So there's a machlokes in the Mishnah if it's a kibetza or if it's a kazayis, and there's a mandamar who holds that for kochim it's a kazayis and for chametz it's a kibetza. The Gemara discusses this, that a Sudas Eresin is a dvar mitzvah. The Gemara brings a conflicting brayso that says that a Sudas Eresin is not a dvar mitzvah. It's only rishos, and therefore you wouldn't go back. So the Gemara either says it's a machlokes, or the Gemara says there were two Sudas done by an Eresin. There was the engagement party, which is a for sure mitzvah, and that's what our Mishnah is talking about. And then there's parties that when the chassan brings the kala gifts, they have a dinner together, and those Sudas are only Sudas rishos. The Gemara then says that a Talmud Chacham is not allowed to go to a Sudas rishos, and the Gemara says that what is a Sudas rishos? A Suda that a non-Kohen married a Kohenes, or an Amaretz married a Bas Talmud Chacham, those are not considered a Sudas mitzvah. And the Gemara says that it's not a good thing for a Yisrael to marry a Kohen, or for an Amaretz to marry a Bas Talmud Chacham. And the Gemara says that some bad things happen if that occurs. However, a Talmud Chacham may marry a Kohenes, and as a matter of fact, the Gemara says that it's a school for Ashiris if a Kohen, if a Talmud Chacham marries a Kohenes. Then the Gemara talks about a Talmud Chacham who likes to party. And the Gemara says that a Talmud Chacham who likes to party and eat fancy meals is someone who's headed for destruction. He's eventually going to lose it all and create a very bad name, even for his children and his grandchildren. Then the Gemara talks about how important it is to marry a Bas Talmud Chacham. The Gemara says that a person should do whatever he can, spend all the money he can to marry a Bas Talmud Chacham, and equally, a father of a girl should spend whatever money it takes to be able to find a Talmud Chacham for his daughter. And the Gemara says that when a Talmud Chacham marries a Bas Talmud Chacham, it's inve agefen be'inve agefen davar no umiskabel. The Gemara then talks about if someone cannot find a Bas Talmud Chacham, what should he settle for? So plan A is a Bas Talmud Chacham. Plan B is the daughter of someone who is oisik in mitzvahs and chesed. Plan C is a gabbai. Plan 4 is a gabbai tzedakah. Plan 5 is a malamda tenoikus. But an Amaretz one should avoid at all cost. The Gemara then says an Amaretz should not be eating meat or chicken because they don't know the halachos properly. The Gemara says that an Amaretz one should stab, even on Yom Kippur, even if it's Shabbos. And of course the Gemara is talking about not just someone who's ignorant, but someone who's very anti. Then the Gemara talks about you're not allowed to even go on a trip together with an Amaretz because we're afraid he would kill you. And then the Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda says, when I was still unlearned, I would want to bite a Talmud Chacham like a chamor, because of the sinna that an Amaretz has for a Talmud Chacham. The Gemara says that one who marries off his daughter to an Amaretz is like he tied her up and fed her to a lion. That's because she will not be treated respectfully by her husband. The Gemara then says that you're not even allowed to learn Torah in front of an Amaretz. So the Gemara says very harsh things about an Amaretz. The Gemara brings a brisa that says that you're not allowed to trust him with edus, you're not allowed to trust him with money, you're not allowed to trust him even to walk with you on the road, and you're not even allowed to return their avedus. Again, this is speaking about Amaratzim that are very anti, not just someone who's ignorant. The Gemara then discusses the fact that there's a machloikis by Birchas Hamazon, if the share of Birchas Hamazon is a chabetza or kazayis, and it's the shitas that hold its chabetza here, hold its a kazayis by Birchas Hamazon, and the shita who holds its a kazayis over here holds its chabetza by Birchas Hamazon. So the Gemara wants to know why in one place do they hold its chabetza, and the other place it's a kazayis. So the Gemara says the machloikis by Birchas Hamazon is dependent on the pasuk. It says v'achalta v'savata, and the question is the savata, is that describing the v'achalta, saying that it has to be an achila of a kibetza, or is v'savata referring to drinking and v'achalta standard kazayis? So that's the machloikis if Birchas Hamazon is on a kazayis or on a kibetza. In our sugya about going back to burn chametz or going back to burn kachim, that's the discussion of logic, and the question is, do you compare it to Tuma, which is the shir of a kabeya, or do you compare it to the Isra Achila, which would be a Kazayas?